shoot a shot. I'm coming in hot.
Well, my name is Rick Saffeels. I am a husband, a father of 4 kids. I'm an educator, a business owner, and I'm excited just to kind of talk with you again. You know, we've had some conversations already, but I love it. You know, it's prime. It's good.
Yeah, I think you, our convos have definitely went the longest before an actual recording session here. But yeah, I'm excited. Now I actually get to, I feel like this is like the 3rd episode, but it's the first time we hit record.
Which is fine. I know. Even now, you're like, oh man, what are we doing here?
Well, I have so many, like, we're going to keep talking when this is done about stuff. And there's so many things swirling right now. This week has been bananas.
Yeah.
It's always weird to watch. I was just doing it today because tonight we're putting out Malik's episode, and it's always weird when I rewatch them, and because there's always been like a month has gone by, and I've had so many different conversations, and I'm like, oh yeah, we talked about that, and we talked about that, and then I was thinking about this one tonight, and then I'm like, I wonder where I'm going to be when this one comes out, and what am I going to be thinking about then?
Yeah.
Because what I've been thinking about this week with all the doors that are opening.
Yeah.
But then when I was with, Malik a month ago or whatever, like none of those doors were there.
Yeah.
And so it's been a weird thing as I look back on episodes, and then I'm about to do one and then think, well, how will I be feeling when Rick's comes out? Like, what will be going on?
I know. Yeah. It's different seasons. I know, like, for us, we started in a season where I was, right out of college looking to not be a teacher, which was weird. And that's what my whole degree was. So everyone's like, hey, you're going to be an elementary school teacher. And I'm like, no. Like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to work at a camp. I'm like, sweet. And how much are you going to get paid? I was like, $6 an hour, probably. It's going to be awesome. No, but really, I mean, it was a ministry, and I loved doing it because I had a name, and it was Tiger. And people were like, oh, it's Tiger. Like, it was like Tiger sightings. Like, I'd be around town and stuff. And it actually kind of was a bad thing, but I started just building pride from that. And it was hard because I wanted it to be about me or a name. So the first thing I did is something at this camp. They had everybody's names and everybody's like camp animal on their T-shirt for years and years and years. And that was the first thing I got rid of. And people hated it. They're like, you're taking our names off. I was like, where are you on that T-shirt? And they're like, oh, I'm on the 2nd row to the left. Okay. And I was like, what about you? And like, oh, I'm on the bottom. It's kind of lame. I'd rather be closer to the top. And even like the structure of the way that the logos were on the shirt, like people cared about. And so that was the first thing I got rid of. And I said, I've seen some places that do this really well. You actually tell the theme that's on the front with a Bible verse so that you remember that the whole thing shouldn't be about you. It's about something bigger than you. And people are like, I hate it. It's not the way that we've always done it. And I was like, well, we're going to start a camp store, and we're going to make sweatshirts, and we're going to do sunglasses, and we're going to sell disc golf, and we're going to build a disc golf course. We're doing a paintball course. We're going to bring in volunteers. We're going to do all this stuff. And they're like, nah, that's not the way we've always done it. And people told me, you can't do this. You're not allowed to do this. And I was like, is it okay if I have permission to go do something that's never been done before? And they're like, we might give you permission to do anything that you say that you're going to try to do. So I was driving all over the state. I was meeting with churches, business owners, trying to bring in as many people as I could just to come see it. Just be like, hey, don't give us any money. Just come and see the camp. And it was a sweet time. It was really fun. And that was the first year. I remember John Walker. He came up to me. He's now the executive director.
Okay. But
he was the guy behind the computer and taking care of all the finances. He goes, Rick, this is the first year that we've ever been in the black for our store. I was like, what? I was like, that's awesome. He's like, we made $80. I was like, yeah. And that was something that was new for me. I was like, I never really realized how the small business nonprofit worked. And so I started as this 22-year-old, had 120 employees, and I was the leader, leading every meeting every morning. every day camp activity, playing the guitar, literally thousands of kids every summer that were coming through there, all the parents coming on Friday nights. And it was amazing. I loved it. And I was there for a really short season, but those 3 years were so impactful for me on how to be a leader as a servant and not just take over things, but like ask people questions and listen. And people saying, this is what we need in our community. Let's build this. This is what we need in our community. Let's build this. Who can I find? My first activity, it was September 2nd. And everyone at the camp was gone because it's after summertime. So they hired me on August, 30th. And then I get there and everyone's gone. And I was like, where's everybody? And they go, well, it's vacation time. Like we've worked, 18-hour days all summer long. I was like, so what do I do? They're like, well, you can go paint that shed over there. And I was like, what? The pump house? And so I learned how to mud and tape and paint a pump house. That was my first job as the new director. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. So I had to go find somebody. And I said, hey, I don't know how to do this, but would you love to come see this new camp that I'm working at, that I have a passion for, that I love? And this guy named Alan came out, and we worked in that little tiny pump house. I mean, it's literally like smaller than this room that we're in right now. And we were in there for like 26 hours over the next 3 days. And we primed and pumped and did everything. And it was just fun. And I just remember that sweet memory. Like, I'll never forget that. That was just like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had worked at Target before, and the next job was, we had to open up boxes. And I'm sitting there at camp as this director, and I'm opening every single box that needs to go into recycling for hours by myself in the rain. No one else was there. And I was like, this is what you have to do. You just have to serve, and you just have to find things to do. And, there's this huge, tree that just fell. What are we going to do? We got to go cut it up. Who needs firewood? Every single house that's here on camp. So we're going to go put it into wheelbarrows, and we'll put it in our trucks, and we'll put it wherever, and, and you just go and do it. And so I learned really quickly as a 22-year-old, like, it's hard to be creating margin. And you got a wife, and we just got married that next July, and had to have a team ready from January until July that was going to be able to run everything so I could leave for a honeymoon. And that's when I learned delegation. It was like, I can put an entire camp into each other's hands going, I don't know how to do this. Can you come help me? And it's the analogy of a boxing ring where you have to have someone in your corner. And they're fixing you up, you get a cut and you're putting it underneath your eyes, and you're just getting bloody, and you're getting, you're getting throttled, and they're coming behind you, and they're like, you got this, they're working out your muscles, and everything just zeroes out. You can't hear the crowd anymore, and all you hear is that person's voice listening, and you're saying the same thing in your head. I can't do this, it's too hard, like I need somebody. And this guy's right here behind you going, you got this. And it's a quiet voice, and everything else out there is screaming and telling you what to do. And so I tell my students that every day when I'm teaching in the classroom. I was like, you have to have someone else in your corner. So look around the room, raise your hand if you know how to do this. Somebody else raise their hand. And you have to look at them and say, neighbor. And they say, neighbor. I say, you got my back? And they go, I got your back. And they go and they help them with whatever it is. So it started early in life, and I've just been able to see that throughout what I've been doing. So, yeah.
Did you go from camp director into education? Was
Yeah.
that the next
So
step?
I was a camp director teaching about 11 guitar students every week, swim students at the Croc Center, and then I was starting playing disc golf before I did my professional career for 4 years in that, and then my wife, that was hard, and so we had a really hard season of a couple of years where I was every day. I mean, I was sleeping in my office. I was coming home. It was like 10 o'clock, and waking up, and I was doing staff devotions at 6 a.m. and it was go every single day. And we didn't have kids. We lived in this sweet camp house, and we had prepped it up for a year and a half. I was so excited. We lived there for 2 months. And my wife, she's amazing. And so we moved into this sweet apartment in Salem. So I was traveling 30 minutes every day into Silverton, and it was what we needed at that time to do. But yeah, it was a tough transitional time right into education. So I'm the director of the camp. I'm subbing 3 days a week during the fall and the spring when there's not all the camps going on. Summertime, 16, 20-hour days. I literally was sleeping in my office when she went to do a mission trip and stuff.
What's the name of that camp?
Canyon View.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Riley has, when she was of that age, she went to that, I think.
Yeah,
2
yeah.
summers.
Yeah.
And she really, that was like the first camp she ever went to. I remember the
that's
first time she
awesome.
went, she was freaked out. And then after the first day, she was like, this is great.
We've had kids that come in off of a bus from Portland that I used to bus in.
Really?
That was an activity that I really wanted to do. We went into inner city Portland, and we picked out a group of kids, and we paid for all of them to come, and we found all these sponsors, and we had 100 kids come into day camp from inner city Portland that had never seen the woods before, and they wouldn't get off the bus. And I was like, what are you guys doing? They're like, there's bears. I was like, no, there's no bears. They're like, there might be tigers. I was like, no, my name's Tiger. That you probably heard the confusion wrong. Like, and it was so cool. But there's 2 kids that stayed on the bus. They're like, we ain't getting out.
Yeah.
We're not doing this. And then you walk in like hand in hand, or like literally holding them around the shoulder, and you walk down this super narrow pathway all the way down into the camp, and their eyes just open, and you see the beauty and the nature, and you hear the creek. And there's nothing like it. Like that is literally my second home. We go fishing there almost every month with my kids. Like that's where they learned how to fish. I'm good friends with the directors there. Associate director Tim Hauser, he's been there. He built the paintball course with me from ground up. We had an old milk delivery truck basically that we hauled up there. We had this culvert that's 1,000 pounds that's like tall enough for me to run through without ducking my head, that we've got from Washington. And he built that paintball course we had VIP days where I said, hey, I don't have any money for anybody, but if you come, we've got Jim Krieg's donuts, and he will make them for everybody. And we were sitting there for hours just building this course in the rain every day until the summer came. And then he had speedball course, and he was having tournament teams coming in, and we built the disc golf course and doing tournaments for professionals that were all over the country. I mean, it was insane. So we just like started building this, like not just for kids, because it was just a day camp, and it was like a Biblion ministry, and there was like a horse camp, and they were all separate entities. People would say, these are my people, this is my camp area. And then I was like, how can we make this Canyon View Ministries? So I created this little logo, made a presentation. I was like, what do you guys think? And they're like, we have to have our logo. We can't change our logo. It's always been this way. And I was like, I get that. That's totally fine. But what about Canyon View Ministries? Like not just Canyon View Camp, not just Canyon View Biblion Ministry, not just Canyon View Horse Camp, Canyon View Ministries. It's just all together. It's the umbrella logo. It's the umbrella name. What do you guys think? And they're like, no. So I fought that for that next year, and I kept on subbing in the schools. And then I was substituting at Salem Academy, and I get there in January, and I was the 3rd science teacher. And after my first day subbing, the principal at the time, he's super awesome, he sent out an email to the entire staff, including me, didn't tell me about it beforehand, and goes, I think we found our new science teacher. And I was like, oh no. Like I was just here for a day, like maybe a week, you know? And that's when I transferred back into teaching. So I became the science teacher there at Salem Academy. And my first activity was all the kids were complaining about what had happened in the past. There was stuff, there was no curriculum. Except for a couple books. There was like no notes. It was just like, hey, you're going to teach it. I was like, sweet. And so I told everybody, I want you all to write down every single thing that you remember that went bad this last year. From September until January, write it all down on the piece of paper, and everyone's writing it, and they're all angry, and they're starting to like say stuff. And I was like, okay, simmer down. And then I had them look at it, and then I said, all right, now take it, crinkle it up, and I want you to throw it in the middle of the class. And everybody did that, and I said, okay, now you're going to go pick it up and throw it away. And we're going to start over. And every time I've come into different places like that, that's what we've done, just like clean slate. Like you write down those memories because they're real. They're negative dense. You don't want to have them, but they're part of your life now. How can we start making these new positive dents? And that's something that I started there. And then as I did teaching and opportunities of speaking in different places like that, like just having that mindset that sometimes you got to start over. It's going to be tough, but having that clean slate is really important. So, from there, I taught science that year, and I was doing middle school yearbook because they needed that. And then the next year, I taught science in middle school yearbook. And the third year, they're like, hey, we need a PE teacher and a health teacher. And I was like, I'll do that. So I did PE and health, and high school yearbook and middle school yearbook. And I know the people that are listening right now, I didn't finish that high school yearbook. I know it was really rough. So thank you, Mrs. Mo, for finishing that for me. But yeah, it was one of those things that I came into that and I was already starting to be really gung-ho into disc golf. So I was training and they asked me, hey, can you teach a class here? I was like, yeah, sweet. They're like, we'll pay you just to teach a class about disc golf. I was like, yeah, perfect. And then I was like, hey, what if I started a team? And they're like, yeah, we need a club. I was like, sweet. So I talked to a manufacturer and I got t-shirts made with a sponsor, a couple on the sleeves, and I got this recruiting team together where I was like, I'm going to take all of the best sports players from the football team, the basketball team, the track team, whoever is the best athletes, whoever's like kind of the more cool kids, and I'm going to go recruit them to be my disc golfers. And they came,
Really?
and I had 12 of the most elite athletes at the school working with me on Saturdays and at school, and they're coming to tournaments, and I was working with some universities, and we partnered with them, and it was awesome. And I still have those guys reaching out to me today going, hey, let's go play. Like, I've actually wanted to do more in my career, like, but I really love disc golf. And so then I started my disc golf journey. And
will you,
it was crazy.
sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Would you, for anyone listening or watching that does not know what disc golf, because I did not know what disc golf was before my parents, they're back in Oregon now, but we're from California, came to Oregon. They went to California, now they're back. But when they moved to California, the church my dad was pastoring right across the street was a huge park.
What church?
It's in Auburn, California. It's called Parkside Nazarene.
Nice, okay.
And there is I guess, in the disc golf world, this park, people go to this park to play. And I remember I went down and visited, and I was like looking across the street, and I'm like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And they were like, this disc golf. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know what that means. I had never heard of it before.
Yeah. Well, taking this from somebody else that was on here, if you show a clip of professional disc golf right here. No, but basically it's, it started with a guy named Hendricks, and he had this Frisbee idea, that started with pie plates, and everybody was doing ultimate and the freestyle. And they decided that they wanted to have a way to not just throw them at the trees. So object golf is how it started. And they were just saying, okay, I'm going to go hit that object in this many par. So instead of going to a golf course and paying their membership dues and getting clubs and balls and everything that they were dropping hundreds of dollars on, they were like, hey, grab this Whammo Frisbee or this whatever Frisbee at the time and go hit that object. And that's how it started. So disc golf is not Frisbee golf. Frisbee golf is what you hear people saying a lot. They say froth. And Frisbee golf was a ultimate Frisbee or a Whammo disc, and it's impossible to get it through the course. And so you'd see these really high pars, like par 5, like 270 feet. And now you can throw a disc golf disc, over 500, 600, 700 feet.
Really?
And so I started training my brain on how to do it right. Because I was throwing a tomahawk, which is like an overhand pitch. Okay. Because I played baseball and water polo and basketball, and everything was that mentality. I can just throw it overhand, and I can get it to the basket. But yeah, disc golf is the backhand or a forehand where you're throwing it towards the chains. And I loved it. Just the way that it went through the air, the sound of the chains, everything. It was really addicting, and that's what it became. And that was the problem. I went from playing casually after work to 3 days a week to 5 days a week to, whoa, Rick, you're pretty good. Maybe you should go sign up for a tournament. Like, a tournament? Like, people play this for money? Like, no, they just play it for, like, disc golf swag. Like, you can get a koozie and you can get, like, a sweatshirt if you win, and you can pick out some other discs. I was like, oh, that's cool. So I went to my first one, and I did pretty well, and I was like, oh, that's sweet. Like, I got 5th place. Like, these guys have been playing for years, and I've been into it for a couple months. And then I bought a membership, and I went to play in my first amateur event, and I I won, and I was like, wow, that's sick. That was really cool. But again, it was not for money. And I played another one, and I beat all the pros that came. And that was my second tournament. And people were like, dude, you got to move up. And I was like, okay. And that's when I started. I started playing disc golf, and I was traveling around Oregon into a little bit of Washington, went down for a world tour event in California at La Mirada, and played with the best 100 people in the world at the time. And I got 72nd, and I was like, cool. Like, that's nuts. And I was like 21st at one point after the first day, and I was feeling so good. And we were going into downtown Disney, and I was like taking selfies. I was like, this is so sick. And I was sleeping in the Knights Inn hotel with another disc golfer because he didn't have any money, and he just came and slept in my bed. And I couldn't sleep that whole night. And I remember waking up the next morning going, I've got like a 12 o'clock tee time. I'm the 4th card of this world tournament. Like, what is going on? 5th card. And I'm playing with a guy who in the disc golf world is now like, he's kind of a legend, but his name's Jeremy Colling, and he's like 6'6", and his name is Big Germ. And I'm so nervous on the first tee pad. I ask him, I go, so during your round, do you talk to people much, or is it pretty quiet? And he's like, bro, like whatever happens. Like just whatever. And I did so terrible. I shot a +10 on the round, and there was a monsoon that came in, and I let it get to me, and I'm videotaping myself going, look at it, it's raining. And I just remember being like, oh, this is so fun. So I did that for 3 more years. I ran about 67 or 68 tournaments in the next 4 years. And I was running between 12 and 15 a year, and sometimes less. Had a baby girl, ran the largest disc golf tournament in Oregon 2 weeks later. I was like barely functioning. We had 144 disc golfers there on Elk Grove,
when
or
you
Elkhorn.
say ran,
Oh,
you mean
yeah.
played in, or
Played
you
in,
were running
and
the event?
I was the tournament director and playing in it.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's what I started doing, because people were always playing on Sundays, and I was always at church, and I was like, I want that to be a family day. So I then said, okay, well, I'm just going to only run tournaments on Saturdays. So I started doing that. And so everybody started coming to my events, and they were traveling from everywhere to play in them because they were on Saturday. And most people were playing the 2-day events or just the Sunday events. And so I changed kind of the mentality of all of my events, there's no drinking. All of my events, there's no smoking. And you come in as family friendly. Whatever happens on the course, it's going to be with integrity. But that's just something that I wanted to be a part of. But yeah, it was tough. So I was then still teaching full time, running these tournaments, playing professionally, making money, selling my own merch. I bought discs, and then I got asked to be on some international teams as their media teams. So I'm producing videos. I'm then coaching, doing clinics, and I'm still having that little pocket of that team that was at Salem Academy that I was coaching. It was just too much. And 2016, I actually partially tore my rotator's cuff, and I kept on playing. So I had 4 shots of cortisone. You're only supposed to have 1 per year. And so it's like the NFL football players that you hear about that they're getting 1 every practice or every game.
That's what I was thinking of, like professional athletes.
So I'm sitting there, and I go to the first doctor, gives me the cortisone shot. I was like, sweet, that felt great. Went to the next tournament, won it. I was like, yes! And then the next one, I was like, oh, it hurts so bad. I got 3rd, another cortisone shot. The doctor goes, can't give you more than 2. So I went to another place. He gave me 1. Went to another place, and I just kept on, like, I was doing physical therapy with a guy named Johnny Galver here in town. He sponsored me to like be his professional athlete, like took my disc and put it on his wall and stuff. And I was like, it's pretty funny because I wasn't a big time. I'm making like $500 a month. And yeah, it just became one of those things where I was hurting so bad I couldn't throw it anymore, but I was still showing up to every Saturday because I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. And supposed to do, became I have to do it. And I wasn't like finding everything in my identity in it, but it was like, this is what I want to do. I'm practicing 5-6 days a week. I'm training my body again like I should be. I'm a professional athlete, and I was just a local professional athlete. Like I wasn't on the tour. I wasn't sleeping in a van. At the time, that's the only way that you can make it, Like people weren't getting flown around. People weren't doing any of that. So
right.
Yeah, so I did that 2015, 2016, 17. And then 2018 came around, and I was like, this is the year. I'm going to do it. I've got 2 kids. I'm going to go full in. I'm going to quit teaching. I'm just going to go full on to disc golf. And I got invited to be in a combine, and I got second place by 1 point, and they invited me to be on their team for their international throwing. And I'm getting the call from Avery Jenkins, who's like this legend in disc golf. And he's like, hey, Rick, how's it going? And I played with a guy named Eagle McMahon. He's like the best guy in disc golf, besides Paul Macbeth. And he's just like, he beat me by 2 strokes, and I was winning the whole round. And then I just like started going down and seeing this negative trend of like, oh man, this isn't fun anymore. And like, what's happening? And I can't throw this and I can't do that. And I get to the end of that day, and I was just like, oh, I'm so tired of this, but I have to keep going. So I planned out 4 more tournaments that I was going to run, and I was like, I'm going to do all of these ones. And then I get to my next tournament, and I'm winning over this field of like 60 other pros, and I'm like first place by like 2 strokes, feeling great. I'm running the tournament as well, so lunchtime goes by, hadn't eaten all day, and it's like 3:00, and I'm just like losing it, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? And we had 2 rounds that day of 18, which is insane. And no, it was 2 rounds of 27. So it's 54 holes, which is dumb. Don't do that. And I'm sitting there pushing my cart and like trying to stay awake. I'm so hungry, and I'm just bogey after bogey. Get on the phone with my wife after I got 5th place, going, I'm so dejected. I can't believe I only got 5th place. And I called her and I go, babe, I'm done. And she goes, I've been waiting for those words for a long time. And that's when I realized that what I had done is I had wanted to become famous, and I wanted that fame, and I wanted that glory. Didn't matter if it was paying any money. It's like what I had started with was hashtag I'm third, God first, other second, I'm third. And it became RS, Rick Saffeels. This is my brand, this is my logo, this is what I'm doing. And it became about pride, it became about self, and everything that I was doing was no longer for God. It was about me. And when I said I'm done, and she said that to me, I went back through all of our conversations of her support and her love and all the things that she had said. And it always been right behind me and helping me out, but it was in the back going, is this really what you should be doing? And having other people from the church going like, is this really wise? But then all my buddies that are disc golfers going, dude, go in. And having people going, hey, I'll be your caddy. And like, let's travel together. And like, I'm ready to go all in on this with you. And so I finished that last tournament. I had planned out 2 more, and I finished those 2. And then I went cold turkey. Literally didn't even touch a disc for the whole next year of 2019. And I started my business for Saffeels Social Media in 2019 that fall when somebody said, I hate social media. Let's meet. And I wasn't doing it at the time. I mean, I had been working with these international brands as a media producer and creating videos and running events and working with people in Australia to Finland to, it didn't matter. I was working with everybody at that time. And I was still this nobody, like local pro, and just growing this like massive people support following. And I mean, they paid my way to go wherever I needed to. And I was like getting all my clothes and everything paid for. And it was sweet. And I had all these little small local companies and then these bigger ones. And then it was nothing. It was just done. And so what I said is that I need to stop thinking about me and thinking about how can I serve small local businesses in this area, because all I've been doing is trying to get free stuff from all these small local businesses and these big companies that are nationally recognized. How can I give back? And so it was going into meetings and preparing presentations for 12 people to take notes on how do you run a social media platform? How do you create value for your clients and your audience? And I'd sit there and I'd work on it for all month to make one PowerPoint to then give it for 45 minutes. And then I felt like that's what I should be doing. So I was still teaching full time, and I started that business, and then COVID hit and everyone wanted to get online.
Yeah.
And it blew up.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I went from this mentality of wanting to be famous and having that fame and glory and everything to, I need to be famous in my own house. I want my kids to look at me and say, that's my dad, because we get to go fishing together and we get to go on bike rides together and I'm there with him every single Saturday. And we created Dadder Day because I had heard somebody doing it and they maybe slipped up on what it was. And we do that every week. And it was Donut Day. And it was, I'm going to go take my kid in my backpack and we're going to walk to this place. And we're not going to drive. We're just going to talk. And I'm going to hold their hand and we're going to do that. My wife is going to say, you're my best friend again. And it's not just this, oh, that's Rick Saffeels. Like, whoa, that's cool. It's like, I just want to be a dad and I want to be a family and I want to be able to help the community. And so my whole mind shift just changed from I want to make millions to I just want to work with people and connect with people. And that's why a lot of people have come to me going, Rick, you're undercutting me. Your prices are so low. Like, what the heck? Like, I don't like this. And I go, I don't need it. I'm teaching full time. I don't have any overhead. I can come in and I can work with a business and I can do it for super cheap. And I work with local freelancers and they are amazing. And they're doing it because they love it too. And I just said, that's what I want to do. So for the last 3 years, I've worked with about 85 businesses now just in the local area. And then I've worked with some national people that have found me somehow on their website and they've just gone, hey, I need that. But I've done no marketing. I've done no ads. I would try to create a few so that people would see like, this is what insights look like and this is how you can produce an ad. So I'd use my platform as a model, but I would put out just random videos of different things just to show them this is what you can create. And I don't want to be that person that's on there doing all of the, kind of cringy reels and all the different things like that. I'm really just creating an opportunity for people to have their own voice and their own presence and their own brand and to be able to push that for themselves going, this is who I am. This is who I've been created to be. And I want to just have some help with that. So can you take this hat off so that I can go run my business and you can do this with me, Rick? And it's not for me, it's with me. Mm-hmm. I really don't like people when they say, can you just go do this for me and be done? Like I work with people that want to have a relationship and want to be able to thrive with that. And it comes at a cost, but at the same time, it's like, the value that they end up getting usually is something that they look back on going like, I didn't just have a mentor that was coaching me every month. I didn't just have somebody who's taking video or photography for me or building my website or building a logo or a brand. It's like, I actually had somebody that I could connect with every single week. He was texting me, and when I text him, he's going to text me right back, and it becomes family. And so I transformed everything that I had done with camp into teaching, into disc golf, and now into family and owning this business with them. And I've taught my daughter, we built a website together. And my other daughter, she made a flyer and she's trying to run her own dog business. And the other one's called Lulu's Licks. And she loves it. She's like, Lulu's Licks, that's what we're going to do. We're going to sell lollipops during the wintertime. And we're going to do lemonade and cake balls and what else can we do? Lulu Licks, let's say, ice cream. Okay. And they're just like entrepreneur minds, they're just doing that. But I asked my kids, I was like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What kind of sport do you want to play right now? I'm like, Dad, I just want to be an adventurer. Dad, I want to be a scientist. Dad, I just want to travel the world. And I'm like, that is it. That is what I want you to have. That's your goal. That's your vision. I don't want you to be like, I want to have a yacht. Like, I just want to make millions and sit on the beach. And we're instilling in them, like, every single week we go on adventures. And they go, Dad, what's the next adventure? My wife's like, another adventure? Like, we've already done 2 today. And she's amazing. She's a homebody. She grounds me because I am a free wind gypsy. I've only stayed at one place for 3 years at a time. And this is the first school that I've even been at for 4 years because I'm ready for the next thing. It's like, what's going to happen next? What's going to do? Those listening, it's an Enneagram 7. Like, I'm the guy who's literally in his shower making a podcast about how lasagna tastes. Like, that's me. And so, I'm working through that, but she grounds me. She helps me to be able to be focused. And I've had somebody just say this last week, they're like, man, you're so laser focused. Like, how do you do that? I was like, well, I give 100% for what I'm doing right then in that moment. I'm trying really hard not to be distracted. My wife would say otherwise sometimes, but I'm really trying hard to put down my phone and to be able to just be present with my kids at that moment and say, nothing else is happening right now. Let me get down on your level. Let me be quiet. And let me just listen to you, to what you have to say. And as you're saying that, I know the emotions that you're going through and the things that you're feeling. And that's just it's a bond that I want to create with those small businesses too. It's if they need something, I'm right there, because I want to be available to them any time of the day. And I say, yes, here are my hours, but if they text me and it's like 5:04, I'm getting right back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's 7:30, I'm getting right back to them. I've had people call me and it's like 2 a.m. My wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, somebody needs help for a reason right now, and I need to talk to them. So it's about being available. I've got a great mentor who's talked about, it's just about showing up.
Mm-hmm.
If you show up, that's 100% of the battle. Most times it's in between the ears. And so showing up changes everything is the quote that he says all the time. And he says, while you are thinking about what you want to do, think about where someone else is at and what they've gone through. And if you show up for them in that moment, you could change literally their whole entire life. My favorite story that happened during the pandemic was this guy was outside of our house, just blackout drunk, standing, and he fell headfirst on the curb. I have my kids all in the car. My wife is right there, and she like screamed. She's like, "Whoa! Like what are we doing?" And I just pulled right into it, and we lived into a beautiful neighborhood of cul-de-sac right behind the Sugar Shack, which was tough. So everyone asked, like, where do you live? And we're like, we're across the street from Dutch Brothers. But he was blacked out right there in front of the Sugar Shack, and I pull in, and he was like, I was like, are you okay? And the first thing he does is put his hand behind his back, and he's like, I can't go back to jail. But he's like, he was thinking that he was getting arrested, and I was just coming to help him. And it was right during COVID, and he's like, my wife's like, don't touch him. Like, he might be out. And I was like, I have to love this person right now with where they're at, and I have to show up for him. And so I'm sitting there mentally. I didn't think about anything else. The cars are going by. He ends up looking at me and going, is it okay if I go to the bathroom? Like, I need to go to the bathroom. And so I got a blanket out of my car, and I held it right next to him. And he right there on the street, like, he had to let go. And I ended up calling 911, and a police officer came, and I had told my wife to go back up to the house with the kids because they didn't need to be there for that time. But the police officer's looking at me going, like, why are you doing this? Like, what is going on? I was like, she's like, do you know him? Like, I was like, no, but he needed help right now. And so I went back up to my house, got my truck, and she's like, I can't take him in my car. So she went and called a taxi, and they said that they would be there in 2.5 hours. And by that point, this guy literally, I don't know his story, he could have been dead. Like, he had just hit his forehead. He was absolutely smashed. And so I said, hey, I'll take him in my truck if you can tell me where you live. And he's like, I can't tell you where I live. And I was like, come on, you can tell us. And the police officer was like, you can tell us. And he's like, are you going to arrest me? I was like, no. And so he's like, okay, this is where I live. And so I drove him in my truck to his house. And again, this is like right in the middle of COVID where everybody's supposed to be like absolutely distancing. And so I drove him to his house, and we got to his apartment, and I dropped him off, and he's like, he didn't want to go into his actual home. He wanted me to drop him off like 300 yards from his home. And he said, I'll just be fine here. And I was like, okay. So I set him down there, and he had to do his business again right there in the apartment complex. And I was like, oh man, this is so sad. And so what I did is I was sitting in my car, and I ripped out a part of this cardboard box that I had. And on the Sharpie edge of it, I just said, hey, I know that this is not the life that you're wanting to live in right now. If you would like some help, call this guy. And I gave the phone number of the guy who said, showing up changes everything. And he runs the Most Excellent Way in Salem for our church. And his name's Matt McCullen. And he works with Be Bold Street Ministry. And those guys are amazing, Josh Lair and Matt Massera. And this guy, I learned about the story because it's so crazy, but he was able to the next day. I had shoved that cardboard piece into his backpack, and he found it the next time he was going for the bottle, and he opens it and looks at it. And he called Matt, and he goes, I need help. And he goes up, and Matt calls me, and he goes, Rick, you won't believe the story, but you showed up for this guy, and it changed everything. and he is now coming to a most excellent way. He's done drinking, but he wants you to drive him to the next episode. And I was like, are you serious? So I had to talk about his life. I didn't even know his name. I didn't know who he was or anything. He told me about his story. He was telling me about how he had gotten to that place. And I mean, it was just incredible. And that night I dropped him off, and we said goodbye. I gave him a hug, and he gave his life to the Lord. And I was like, man, like, you know, he fell back into addiction, and he fell back into that drinking because it was easy, and it was that mentality. But since then, you know, I've fallen out of touch with him. But I remember that moment going like, showing up changes everything. And that quote that Matt says all the time is like, if we are able to show up for people and say like, I'm giving you whatever I have, it doesn't cost anything. People see that grace and they go, that's not natural. That's not normal. Like, what is that? And I say, that's Jesus. That's what he gave to us. And that's been something that my whole life now has just continued to move towards. It's just like, we have to show up for each other. You know, the Keep It Local Salem, you know, was something that I pushed really hard during COVID, and just helping small local businesses. And we ran raffles and giveaways and different things like that. And, you know, just things that we could do to provide for these businesses that were really struggling during that time. And even on the, you know, the potential freezing forecast of financial things happening here in the future, it's like, you know, how can we show up for each other during this time? And many times it's just, you go and you say hello to somebody and you strike up a conversation. You've never met somebody before, and you connect on such a deeper level because you're not talking about finances. You're not talking about what's the next big thing, what's the next NFT, what's going on here in HBO. It's like, what's your story? And when I ask him that and I say, what's your story? And by hole 13 of every time I played disc golf, if I hadn't said that to somebody, I knew that I had wasted that round. And that was another thing, you know, with disc golf. It was like, everything that I was trying to do at the beginning was a ministry. It was like sharing the gospel with people. And then it was like, nah, it's just about me. So getting back to that, it's being in the Word every single day. It's doing devotions. It's being able to meet with people and connect with people, but asking them, how are you actually doing right now? Because when you change that one word to, how are you doing, to how are you actually doing, people stop and they're like, oh, thanks for caring. And they'll sit down and they'll tell you. And so just getting back to that point of building those relationships and thriving with people and saying, I want to come alongside you. And yeah, I have those hopes and those dreams to do something for my family that provides for them, that's, you know, beyond anything that $6 that used to be, that my, you know, we used to laugh at where we're living now and going, oh man, wouldn't that be crazy to live in that? And they were living in it. And it's like, but where did it come from? Mm-hmm. It wasn't me. I didn't do any of it. I mean, it was totally God. And so, yeah, just thankful for that piece of it and that story that I've been been a part of. That's my testimony. And, but yeah, it's interesting to see how businesses grow and thrive. And many times it's based on the backbone. You know, you hear about Les Schwab and who he was as a man, mm-hmm. and why it's grown into a multi-million-dollar company. It's because of the integrity that he had and keeping it close-knit family and saying, this is how we are going to run this business. And every single time that somebody comes in, we are going to run to their truck or run to their car. Same thing with Chick-fil-A and how they're able to say, my pleasure. I mean, it's just being able to have those foundational ideals to be able to say, this is how life should go, and this is how grace should look, and this is what it looks like to get down on someone's level and say, I'm here for you, and to be able to care for their basic needs. And so, yeah.
You made a comment about like making it.
Yeah.
It made me think about, and I'll say this because his episode will be out before yours, so it's not like I'm telling his story before it's out. But with Jim, who I was telling you about, who's Damian Lillard's personal trainer and good friend, who I just spoke with a couple days ago, one of the things that, one of the stories that he said, that it was like, what a perspective. He said one time he was over at Dame's house. They were, I think, watching boxing like they always do, I guess. And Dame's like, grandma was there and brother and kids are running around. And Jim's sitting there and he's like, this is what making it is.
Yeah.
Like he's got all his like family around him. The kids are running around, banging on stuff. He's not like, oh, that's so expensive. That costs a lot of like, and he was like, this is what making it is.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, man, trying to change that idea of what making it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's got this interesting platform with being close to a current superstar in our world's eyes. But some of the stories that he shared and whatnot, it's like, man, like he gets it. There's a Lamborghini out in the garage, probably a couple. But like his view of making it was, look at all the family that's around and no one's worried about if this kind of gets messed up or that gets messed up. And, you know, I like resonate with like that idea, like changing the, like, what is making it look like?
Yeah.
'Cause we all got a different thing, you know, and yet society they show the flashy stuff. They show all this stuff. And, you know, it's just a conversation that's been had on here by multiple people. Yeah. I just haven't talked with someone that's in that kind of circle with those kind of resources and fame and whatnot. But just, I don't know, changing the narrative of like what making it looks like. Like Jim doesn't want to be Dame. He doesn't want, he's not a basketball. He's a trainer. He's a boxer. Great. Dame, go get your hundreds of millions of dollars, do your thing. That's fantastic. I'm going to do what I love to do, which is train people. Yeah. And I feel like I'm making it because I'm doing what I really enjoy to do with people. Yeah. And so that's one thing I kind of like thought about in terms of like making it, changing that narrative of what that looks like. Another thing you had said about once you stopped it being like all about you, what can I give back? I'm living that right now. And it's it's doing this podcast is actually holding me a lot more accountable, because when I say stuff on here, I got to be able to back it up in real life. So like if I go home and I'm a jerk to my wife, and yet I'll sit and talk nice things about her on the podcast, or, you know, it forces me to like, I need to live this way. 'Cause now I'm starting to get patted on the back. Now people are starting to say nice things about this podcast. Now people are saying, do you want an investment in your podcast? Do you know, like these things. And it like checks me, because you made the thing, I want to be famous in my house. And I recently shared something on my story of the head coach of Texas A&M saying that same thing, and he's lightweight famous in his space, but he was talking about like, I just want to be famous in my household. I want my wife to look at that success to me. I want my kids that is success to me. And I'm feeling that now. I'm feeling like when I go home and be a dad and be a husband, like I got to really do this, because I'm saying this stuff now and it's recorded and I'm on camera and this thing's growing, and not that everything's perfect, but it really has caused me to check myself, check my ego. Why am I doing these things? And it's been very interesting as I've started practicing some of these. Well, what would happen if I made it about everyone else? Yeah. What would have happened if I created something where people don't even know who this dude is?
I know. And when we talked about that, I know you'd been getting a lot of advice of like, hey, show your face and do this stuff. And when we mentioned that stuff, it's like you're doing something that YouTube actually bans. When you do a faceless podcast, I read a video about it just recently, because I was going to send it to you, but I want to tell you in person, because I was looking it up, and YouTube actually hates when you are not having your face on there. And so they will create this like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. And it was a while ago. And I saw these two girls talking about it and like, yeah, you have to show your face if you're doing a podcast, and showing it on YouTube. Because they were having all these people wearing masks and people doing dark face or like a shadow and all that stuff. But that's what always intrigued me when I was listening to documentaries and they changed the voice and it'd be like, this is my voice and I'm no longer in prison and whatever. And so the thing is like, I really liked that about this. Like, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what River City Insurance was, except for I went back through our text thread and I had won Blazer tickets from you guys that I had to give away at some point.
That's what it
and
was.
And that's where we first met.
That's what it was. I was thinking, like, when did I?
And it was
first,
like during the pandemic.
It was the Blazer ticket. Yes.
And we never got to go. And so I remember thinking, going, oh, okay. So I went back through my messages because I saw River City and I saw that and I pieced it together. Did a little bit of, reconnaissance missions on Google. And I was like, Tom Cruise over here trying to do Mission Impossible. And then I was like, oh, it's him. And then when I walked in the first time and I saw you and you were like 6'7", and I was like, oh, hey, what's up? I mean, that was a realization for me. Like, you've got something here where people aren't looking at your face and they don't know who it is and they don't know what your name is. And I'm not going to say it even. And, just the idea, it's like, that's such a unique thing now that everybody's wanting to put at their face and they're wanting to show what they do and how much money they make instead of what's your story? What do you do? What are your clients, really their hurting points, as you call their pain points? What is it that your audience actually is going to gain from you? And it comes down to, what is the chair? Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to it, it's you're getting people to share their stories to be able to change other people's lives. Mm-hmm. And whatever you boil it down to, mm-hmm. Your vision or your mission statement, that's what's going on. And people are just getting to be real. And what ends up happening is, it's kind of weird, but these microphones make you just spill your guts and emotions come out. I mean, I've seen it on your podcast. I mean, people are just like gushing about stuff that they've never told people before. Yeah. And it's just like, this is like a truth serum that people haven't really recognized in their life. They go, whoa, afterwards they're like, that was so freeing. Yeah. And that's what, we were trying to produce on social media now that's a little different in our story, that as we help clients and help businesses, it's like, you have to tell your story. I don't care what kind of house you just sold. I don't care what type of products necessarily you're selling. What is it that's really important? Tell your story and meet your clients where they're at so that they will think, I don't want to get sold to, mm-hmm. but people love to buy. Mm-hmm. So as they're hearing your story, they say, I'm investing in that. And it's not, I'm buying that, it's I'm investing in that. And you just said that with Lacey's story. I mean, it's the idea that somebody is able to look around and go, I'm investing in that because I heard her story and now I care so deeply that it's changing my life. It's not just a financial thing. It's like, I'm going to think about that every time now for the rest of my life, that person went through that story. And it's just incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this week has been something else. Yeah, I mean, when you walked in and who I was talking to on the phone, and before you got in there, he's a good friend of mine, and he's been on this, but he's like, it's almost like he's struggled to be like, I don't really get it, but it, like, I know it's something, but like, what do you like? And you walked in kind of the cool part when he was like, well, I'll give you some money if you want to invest her. But before that, I was kind of explaining like what's been going on and the different stories and connections and doors that are being opened. Like, I was just thinking like those Blazer tickets. Yeah. Those were given to me from Willie, who's been on the chair, who works for the Trailblazers.
And then I was able to give those to somebody else. And they were like, wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And it changed them. And so that's the thing. It's just like, yeah.
And so I was explaining to him some of the different stuff. And then he asked me, how do I champion you? And he asked, what he does is high end stuff. And so he's working with some major CEOs right now. And he was asking me like, how would I, how should I tell them about this, or how would you present this? And it's almost so simple that it's confusing people that they'll be like, yeah, but like what else? And I'm like, I just have them tell their story, like whatever their personal story is. Yeah. yeah, but like I don't get it though. Like what are and I'm like, that's what the conversation is.
Yeah.
And it's almost so simple that people are like, they're asking me like what, and I'm like, I don't have more answers for you. Like I
Yeah.
there's not some bigger huge that I can explain to you
Yeah.
other than I just had wondered, could someone create something where potentially everyone's invited and everyone feels welcome, and create this platform where everyone built it together. It wasn't about the creator.
Yeah.
Some people didn't even know who the creator was.
Yeah. Or where you worked. Or where to even find your podcast.
Exactly.
You know?
Like, and there might be invitations given, and these people are accepting these invitations and they don't even know who invited them.
Yeah.
And could we create this conversation and build this thing where we all built it together? It wasn't me. I'm building this on everyone else.
Yeah.
And that, like, before you walked in, I felt like he started to catch the vision, because he started to say like, well, like, it's almost like this, and this. And like, well, I guess that's so simple, but like, man, that's really meaningful.
Yeah. Totally.
And I was like, well, that's it. And I go, I don't really know of anything that's quite like what this is becoming.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I don't either. And I said, but like, how powerful would it be where like, if everyone felt invited to something and comfortable, and they could be honest and vulnerable, and people could relate to it, or like, now I hear people are like, hey, these two people are friends because this person watched this podcast, like all these different things. And like, and no one really, like, it doesn't matter who the creator is. That doesn't matter. It's just about everyone else's story. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're going to, because he was like, man, there's so many divisive things in the world. Most stuff that's out there is somehow I'm trying to divide you, whether it's race or politics or religion or status, or somehow I'm trying to divide you.
Yeah.
He's like, but this is something like, you know, people could really relate to one another. And I was like, yeah, bro, like, you're like, yeah, that's like, I think that's what I'm, you know, this is trying to be. And then I said to him, I said, what do you think that'd be worth? And he was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like maybe unlimited. I don't know what that would be valued at, if there was something where, hey, everyone's invited.
Yeah.
Everyone can be themselves.
Well, I told you the only thing that I can even compare it to, which is a huge, compliment to you right now, is the people of New York, which is a random guy who nobody knew. It was just the people of New York. He would go out and interview them, and they would tell their story. And then hundreds of thousands of people are now following this thing. I don't know how big it is now, but I remember my wife sending me those stories going, babe, I'm crying. She's like, no, I'm not crying. You're crying, you know? And that's the thing. It's like, when people listen to these stories now, whatever snippets you put on Instagram, whatever things that you put into the podcast, they're listening to these live stories, and they're like in the room with them.
Yeah.
They're in the gym right next to them. They're listening on the AirPods as they drive. And they're now saying, I get to be a part of that person's story. I've never met them before, but I can relate. I've never seen them in person, but they're my brother. And it's something that's unique. I mean, it's like when you hear most famous people up on whatever platform they're doing, they seem so distant and they're so far away, and you're like, oh, I can never attain that. And so I'm just going to like and follow them. With these people, it's like everybody that you've had on so far is basically a normal person.
Yeah.
And as they get to tell their story, they get to show how normal of a person they are.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they're making millions or if they're making tens of dollars. It's just like everyone that you've had on there, people can relate to whatever their story is. So that's what's really powerful.
And that's, I look forward to, as this expands and some of the doors that are opening, of having, certain celebrity, if you will, or whatnot, to show like we all kind of are the same.
How human
like
they are. Yeah.
we all kind of want the same stuff. We want to, have a roof over our heads and have people that care for us, and we'd like to do something like that we enjoy and have a passion to do. Like, and I think me starting this and everything I've been through in my life, that's like the common thing. I'm like, man, I know a lot of people, and to be honest, like we're more similar than we're not.
Totally.
And we all like different economics, different races, religions, and there's so much stuff that is just how different we are, and I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. And I mean, I'm starting to live my dream right now.
Yeah.
When I was talking with Jim a couple of days ago, and he's flying on private jets with Dame and all this kind of stuff, and he's like, I told him, I said, I'm starting to do that. I've dreamed about these conversations and that it could really matter and touch people and change some lives. And, we got people writing checks to other people they don't even know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when it starts to happen, it's a very, very strange, humbling, it's almost indescribable what this last week has been in this. And it's so affirming of there's something here. This matters. People like these conversations.
Yeah.
And for me, bro, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I don't come into these things with like preloaded questions.
I know. That's what I was looking at. I was like, what questions are we going to be answering today? And there's none. That's the cool thing too. It's not scripted. It's just real life. And that's what I think people also gravitate towards.
Which starting this, because my nature is pessimistic. I mean, I sell insurance, right? So,
you're gonna probably break your leg, so you need to have this.
You gotta be like, well, what's gonna go wrong?
Yeah,
right.
That's
You're not the guy that says what's going to go right. Like, you're buying this from me because something might go wrong.
See, and I'm the opposite. Yeah, we're in different,
exactly.
Yeah,
right?
We're in different spaces. I'm the optimist telling you, you're going to get this because you're doing this, and this is how it happens, and let's build it. So yeah, that's tough.
My dad is like you. He's the glasses half full, right?
Mine's 3/4 always. Yeah.
my dad and me, like, here's the difference. My dad, like, if you let my dad down, he's super bummed and he's surprised. If you don't follow through with me, I expected that.
Oh,
like that. I've lived a lot of life like that, and I will say with this podcast, there's been a lot of stuff that's beginning to soften some of that outlook in life. But a lot of my life and different things that have happened, I've just seen a lot of people not follow through or not, including myself. Including myself. I've let people down and hurt people. And so I've just by nature, I'm kind of that way. I mean, I walk into restaurants and I always know where the doors are, the exits are. I'll never sit with my back to the room. I will always sit up against a wall. Like when me and my wife go to dinner, she literally knows where I'm going to sit at the table.
I don't even know what I'm going to order until the waitress has already been there for 5 minutes.
So you're like my wife, and it drives me nuts because my wife will say, she'll look at the menu and then she'll look at the server and she'll be like, well, what do you like? And I'm like, I'm about to throw this menu at you right now because you need to eat what you like, not what the server likes. So like, it takes all of us to make this world go round. I get that. So with that being said, going into this, I absolutely was hopeful, but that was more me trying to be hopeful. The normal nature me is, these are going to be long and in depth, and I'm going to interview a bunch of nobodies, and I'm a nobody, and who's going to listen? And social media is just entertain me for quick, and I'm off to the next thing. So there was a lot of reasons I was like, this probably, I don't know if this will really, I mean, for me, I love deep stuff and documentary stuff, but I'm like, I don't know if that's most people. I don't know. I don't know. So, but I dreamt about a lot of this utopian thing. Like, man, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants someone to ask them, how you really doing? Tell me
Yeah.
your story. I truly believe that God has wired us this way.
Yeah.
And I understand, people have different beliefs. I'm a Christian. I've said that multiple times. I believe people are wired to want someone to listen to them and
Yeah.
hear them.
Well, that's why the Bible is so interesting, because it's set up as a story from beginning to end. It's not supposed to be grab this little treat in the morning and post this little thing that's an encouragement. And it's supposed to be, you read it as it was written from the beginning to the end, and everything is a narrative. And so as we see that God's story, rolls out, it's so unique because I'm a part of his story. It's not my story. And so even when I'm sharing my story, one of my favorite things is about the camp that we worked at. I hired this guy to come be our preacher for the week. And he was very generous to come in, and we were paying him like $50. It was like, but he was a great speaker. And the one thing that he said has set forth a fire in my coaching and my teaching. I mean, I was football coach, track coach. I was doing all these different things, basketball. And I still have the same thing. It's one purpose, God's glory. One purpose, God's glory. What are you doing today? Well, I'm going to go eat my breakfast. Why? Well, my one purpose is for God's glory. Why are you doing this podcast? Selfishly, it could be for ourselves. So what I have to get back to is him first. Okay, my one purpose, God's glory. And my wife and I, we wrote that when we were dating. We'd write him first because we kept on liking each other so hard that we just couldn't keep apart. We were just thinking about each other all the time. So I started writing that on my hand every day. And I was like, I'm not going to get a tattoo. I mean, I know you got some cool ones. Yeah. But that was the thing. It was just, I wrote it every day. Him first. One purpose, God's glory. And so everything that I've said, this podcast, you've said it yourself too. It's like, if it becomes a part about who I am or what you are doing or how much money I can be making, then it's going to start going off the wrong track. And that's what's tough. It's like any business owner has that same struggle who is a believer. They have to go, is this going to be helping the community, or am I just trying to build up my wallet so it's fat, Mm-hmm. And that's hard. So as everybody's a little bit different with that, that's me. I'm the same way. It's like I've been down that road, and I've seen that even though I wasn't making a lot of money, it was like that same idea of pride. And pride comes in different ways. It could be coming in, you're making $5 a day, or it could be coming in, you're making $5 million a day. Mm-hmm. And whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's still pride. And so it's the idea that I'm putting something before anything else that should be God's. So
yeah, when I started doing this, a mentor of mine who I imagine will never listen to these, but he had early on, and this is before I put out, I think, any episodes. So this was a lot more just ideas than what's actually been done. But we got coffee or whatever one time months back, and I was super excited about this, and maybe I was just buying all the equipment and starting to learn how to use it. And he had, he was like, that sounds really cool. I'm curious, how does God fit in to this? Or does he?
Yeah.
And it it sounds elementary, but I was like, well, that's a good question, because I don't think I've really consulted with him on this. This really started more as, how can I network and meet new people for River City, and offer something cool in the community. Mm-hmm. Not that it started with still good intentions.
But it's just for referrals, basically.
Yeah, but it was really more just business, like how could this... And that's what started me thinking, like, other than me just saying that I'm a Christian or sharing that, like, how else does that intertwine in all this? And that's really where and maybe I was already putting out some content, but I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing with the whole, like, yo, we don't know what you look like. And that's when I was like, well, maybe I'll just keep doing that, because the Jesus that I believe in the book that I read and how he moved, like, it wasn't about him.
Yeah.
And so then I thought, well, everyone says like make a personal brand and get famous, and and I was like, well, maybe this will be a part of my like belief and how it's incorporated in that. And then it was like, well, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's, can something be created where it doesn't matter who the creator was? It doesn't, it still can thrive, and it because of everyone else.
Yeah.
Not because of the because I mean, everyone I watch online, like, they're all famous themselves.
Yeah. Not like speaking about, Gary Vee or anyone.
Yeah. They're all, and that's a different model. They're selling different things. Like, believe me, I have plenty of friends that make posts all the time and whatnot. Like, I understand that, but for my mission of what I wanted for this, I was even curious of like, can that work?
Yeah.
Can that work? And so now it's turning into a funny thing. It certainly is. Like I said earlier today, friend was like, yo, someone reached out, said, saw you on the podcast. That's cool. Who is the guy? Like, I can't Google him. I can't. And she's like, that's my friend, blah, 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 and so now it's turning into more of a funny thing. But, there has been some thought.
But that mystery is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, and it's different. Yeah. It's different, so I know as it grows and over time, obviously, I'll probably, attend events, or I'm going to a gala tomorrow that I got invited to.
Sweet.
Fundraiser to meet the people that run it, maybe have them on. Like, I know I'll go to public things. But chances are I'm never going to make a Instagram reel of something I say.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that too. Like, not part of the microphone, we weren't in here. But we had a long conversation just about like what even the chair is. And you might never share that story on here, but I loved it, just being able to hear why the logo, why the story. And it was emotional. I mean, it was amazing. And just being able to hear that story. And so whether the world ever gets to hear about it or not, I think you just telling the people that are even on the show what it is, that's enough. So,
yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Man, what haven't we covered? Yeah.
No, I think that for me at this point, I'm thankful for where I'm at with my business. Running a social media business that's not a marketing business is interesting because everyone else is doing marketing and they're trying to run people's ads and do stuff like that. And that's where you make a lot of money. People are like, yeah, I'm doing $80,000 a month now. I'm like, sick. Cool. And that's just not my heart right now. And maybe it, changes someday, but it's like, I really like working with mom and pop shops and working with the small local vendors and working with a brand new business who has never even, I'm working with somebody right now in Michigan, and he didn't even have a name for his business, and he told me what he wanted his name to be, and it was awesome, but it was his gamer name from like middle school. I was like, sick. Okay, we'll build your brand about that. So we started it and built the logo and everything, and then he's like, okay, scrap that. We're doing this different direction. I was like, sweet, we're doing that. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to come in and just tell somebody what to do. I want to be able to allow them to know that in the grand scheme of things, eternal mindset, this is really important today, but how is this going to impact eternity? Like the chair, how is this going to be a generational thing? Chamber of Commerce, whatever, thing we start doing here in the future, it's like, how is that going to be generational for people to look back 100 years ago? I asked my wife, I was like, what does Macy's look like 100 years ago? What does Macy's look like 200 years ago? Was it around 300? Nope, it wasn't. Okay, so how does it become generational? Like, that's really crazy, but it was only a few generations past.
Yeah.
What do you look at for the whole world history, and how does it change somebody's like entire life pattern? It's like one story could change it all. So whether it's on social media or if it's in person, like, that's what I'd rather be about. So I'm not doing marketing. I don't do that as much. I have affiliate marketers that I push it to. I'm just about telling people's story. And so that's what's kind of fun for me, at least. But
which makes more sense how we so connected the first time you came here to do an episode, and we talked so long.
Yeah.
And then your wife called.
I know.
But it makes more sense why it seemed like you really heard what I was saying
Yeah.
and what I was thinking.
Yeah, just similar brainwaves of the same, mission, which is you want to hear about people's story and where they've come from and what their lives are, and now let's tell other people about that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, for people watching or listening, some stuff in life, I think we make more complicated than it needs to be, and just simply slowing down a little bit and really caring. I've been in sales jobs, right? Like I told you earlier, that's why some of the employers didn't really like me, because I took too long. They're like, you got to get in and get out, and I'm like, I don't want to do that.
You're
like
thorough.
I want to I'd like to get to know them a little bit,
Yeah.
because I just make some money, but and so that's always been the strange thing with me working for people and trying to sell. They were like, we love you and you get along so well with people, but then the selling part, I just wasn't that rapid fire guy. And so going into this, I knew, well, this is going to be slower paced. This is going to be deeper. And most things in life say that doesn't work.
Yeah. I've been doing art for a long time. I used to take art lessons when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, and this old lady would cook us popcorn on her stove and give us pink lemonade. And I just remember very vividly, she would say, good artwork takes longer than 3 hours. And I was like, I'm in 2nd grade. There's no way I'm sitting for 3 hours. And I sat there every week for 1 hour, and it didn't move. It was me and this other girl and her younger brother. And I learned how to make good art. And it took time. And now in the world, it's like, you have 7 seconds. Go, quick. What's going to be? And so it's hard for me to try to create really fast stuff that's really good for people, because it's like, I want to be able to take my time. And so that's why I'm up late nights and working on different things and going behind the scenes, it's taking a lot longer. But what you're going to see is you just got a whole website built in 2 days. Yeah. And you now have a marketing plan that's going to last you 3 months, or you're going to be able to have these different photos and stuff. But the editing piece, your guy that's doing all these videos and podcasts and everything, it is hours and hours of labor to be able to do that. And that's what is good art. I just went down to Salem on the Edge, and I was taking my kids down there to see it for the first time. And the little girl, my daughter, so sweet, she's like, how long did it take to paint that? And I was like, Lucy, what do we say about art? She's like, it takes a while to make it. I was like, that right there did not happen in a couple of minutes. And most sales, they have 15 minutes for a discovery call, and they either are working with you or they're not. And for me, it's like, I will book a 30-minute appointment, pretty open-ended after that. So I will sit there and have the conversation and work with people and try to really dive into what they're needing, more about that than how much it's going to cost. And providing something that's of value to somebody because they actually need that service rather than me pushing it on them. So get them in at an entry level where they say, yeah, that makes sense. And then being able to keep them for 3 years, that's crazy, Insurance is the same thing, though. It's like, how can you keep somebody as a client for their whole life?
Right.
That's generational.
Right.
My brother-in-law, Alex Ferry, he's doing that. He's working with his dad, and he worked with his dad. And it's just, that's generational, that you now have families working with one agent over 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then their whole generation will probably be the same. Same thing with real estate agents. It's like, you've built something and you have a family name tied into it, whatever it is. And it's generational. So,
yeah.
I
remember when we first met, I had said to you, I'm like, man, because my wife's a teacher, I'm like, you're teaching and you're doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you were like, oh, I used to do 7 other things.
I'm only doing 2. That's pretty good, right? I know. People always say you're chasing 2 rabbits, you can't catch either. And I was like, I caught 3 when I was chasing 2. It was weird.
Yeah. I've heard a few times people, when they're asking me about this podcast and who it's for, and I'm like, it's kind of for everyone. And they're like, well, if you try to please everyone, you please no one. And I'm like, I get that saying, like, for certain things, but like I don't know if that is for everything. Like,
Well,
like
you found a niche. You don't have people that are listening to it that don't like stories. So if you don't like stories, this podcast is not for you. So you found something that everybody wants. I mean, since literally the beginning of man, everybody told things in narratives. They'd sit around a campfire and they'd listen to a story, and that got passed down generation to generation. And then it finally got it written down, and it was a language. And then people were speaking it and writing it down, and then it became translated and everything else. And what this is that it's someone sitting down, listening to a narrative, not having to do any work, and just being able to listen. And that's simple. And that's what drives our nature to be able to be a part of a community. If you don't want to be a part of community, that's where you'll find people living in John Day. And you find these people living in Ukiah. And we go on mission trips from our church to go reach out to them on a yearly basis because they went there for a reason. They weren't trying to live in a city. They weren't trying to live in a neighborhood. But the people that they found in that place became family. And so whether there's 26 people in that whole community, I mean, we've gone there. It's so amazing. Like, we did a VBS in Monument, Oregon. So take John Day and then go left into absolutely nowhere. And it's just a little town called Monument. And we were there for about 12 years. Just every summer we'd go and we'd do a VBS with them and partner with them. And it was so beautiful. I mean, it's just family. People would be going down the rivers and people would be, doing arts and crafts. But what it was like we'd be gone for a whole year and we'd come back and we'd pick up like it was yesterday. And same thing, we went to Kaibito, Arizona for the Indian reservations. And we did that for 16 years. And it was just the same thing. It was those family bonds. And it's the people would tell the stories. And people would share this. And people would go, I need to be a part of that. And when people get into that, that's that fear of missing out. Yeah. I want to create those ideas and those events. It's like, if you're not a part of this story, then you are missing out. Yeah. And that's what you're doing here. I mean, people are now like, hey, Rick, what is this? I go, I can't tell you yet. I'm sorry. And they go, it's the chair. Like, but who runs it? And I was like, well, I'm sorry. I don't know. I do now. But that was the thing, that's the piece. It's like people hear the story. They say, I want to be a part of it. And then it continues. Yeah. And people will continue. I mean, you're going to fill up every day of the week, and you could fill up hours during the day, just people telling their stories. Yeah. And you wouldn't even have to sit here necessarily. Like, you could have a mic with a camera and people would just share their stories. Yeah. And that's, that's crazy, but it doesn't have to be about who you are. Yeah. It's about people being able to listen to a narrative and being able to relate back, like what we said at the beginning. So, yeah.
Recently I had someone say something to me and I was like, yes, that is the perfect response, because I've had plenty of people. I had someone today say, man, whenever you tell your story, can I interview you, me? And
I've said that.
Yeah. You said, someone today said, people have said that, which I appreciate. I like it. But I had someone recently, she was like, you should be the last interview. And I was like, that's genius. And she's like, because who knows when that last interview is going to be? And I was like,
that's cool. That's a cool thought.
That's an interesting, like.
But then we talked about too, like, you don't even have to be the last. Like, somebody takes this on with the same mindset, the same ability, and it goes on another 100 years. Mm-hmm. And whatever podcasts turn into, I mean, we didn't have this 30 years ago. Right. We had the radio. Right. And so being able to have something like this, whether it's a vlog or it's literally a mental trip from meta universe of Facebook, man, whatever it is, it's going to be the same, same thing. It's the ideals of telling a story. Right. But I love that idea of being the last interview. That's super cool.
I just thought it was funny because when she said that, I thought what I think most people thought, which was, well, when's that going to be? I was like, well, when's that last one going to? And then I was like, that's perfect. Yeah. I don't know. Like, because I won't do one for a long, long time because this is part of my story. Yeah. Like
it's real.
And so, it's been interesting. I have a feeling you and this will not be our last conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. But I appreciate you asking me to be a part of the show. And, for anyone that's listening, if you don't know who is behind the microphone and who is on the chair, it doesn't matter, because it's about who sits down in the chair to get interviewed. And that's the cool thing about this podcast. The whole design of this is let the story be told from the person on the other side of the mic, rather than who's getting famous from listening and who's getting famous from running the show. So I love it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, man. Man, I feel like I've used up a lot of your time. I'm sure your wife is ready.
She only called me twice so far. Yeah. No, she's amazing. So,
well, thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.